I saw her on a TV show, even though I had never met her before, so I said, "That's right." For decades, Robert Redford has been the embodiment of calm in chaos, the new gentleman of Hollywood. While others may have exploded, faded, or gone silent, Redford has remained steadfast, shining and rising above every battle. He doesn't chase after sensational headlines. He doesn't gossip. And until now, he has never shared his private life. At 88 years old, the Oscar-winning icon has finally spoken about what those closest to him have known for many years. There are actors that make the work unbearable, those he clashed with behind closed doors, the legends he couldn't tolerate. And while the performances are iconic, the experiences were completely different. This is not gossip. These are names, and some will break your heart, because when you read the last name on Redford's list, you might never watch one of Hollywood's most beloved classic films the same way again. Gene Hackman. They starred together in Downhill Racer and collaborated on many other projects over the years. But Redford and Hackman were never friends and never wanted to be. Hackman, who possesses raw power, often clashed with Redford's calm and controlled style. On set, Hackman was known for exploding during rehearsals, challenging directors and dismissing subtlety in favor of brute force. Redford found it exhausting. "He's one of the greatest," Redford once admitted to a colleague, but he never cared about who he would have to outshine to reach that goal. What began with mutual respect in the 1970s quickly turned into a wary distance. Redford admired Hackman's work ethic. No one could accuse him of being lazy. But Redford found those methods unbearable. Hackman approached every role like a battleground. He not only acted, but dominated. Directors often got caught in the crossfire, and co-stars became victims too. Redford, who preferred collaboration and quiet discipline, found Hackman's volatility disruptive. You never knew which Hackman you would get. An assistant director said about Downhill Racer, the clever one or the aggressive one. There were small outbursts throughout the shoot. But there was one moment that shattered them all. In a crucial, emotionally driven scene, Hackman was reportedly very upset about the lighting setup, which he felt was unflattering. He refused to leave his trailer, delaying production by nearly an hour. The director tried to intervene, but it was useless. Finally, Redford personally went to Hackman's trailer, opened the door, and said in front of the crew, "This is not your movie, John. This is a team effort. Show up. Or step aside." Hackman showed up. But they never spoke privately to each other again. When alone, Redford often called Hackman. "It's like a sledgehammer in a violin shop. The issue isn't talent." Redford never denies Hackman's greatness. It's about control, temperament, and basic respect. Redford, who quietly started producing and directing in the late 70s, is said to have vetoed Hackman's name from many casting lists. "Not worth it," he would write in the margins. An excellent actor, a man of ideals. Their careers have continued alongside each other for decades. Both are Oscar winners. Working with Hackman? No. Redford paused and offered a polite smile. He mentioned that some pairs only need to happen once. He left it at that. He's one of the greats. Redford once admitted to a colleague, but he never cared about who he had to outdo to reach that position. James Woods. Their political and personal philosophies couldn't be more different. Even though they never acted in the same film, Woods auditioned for supporting roles in Redford's projects many times and was consistently turned down. Redford later revealed that he found Woods genuinely unsettling and very hard to be in the same room with. An audition ended with Redford walking out after Woods questioned him about Vietnam policy during a courtroom script reading. He brought chaos to places that needed calm, Redford later said. I don't care to manage that energy. It's not just a political issue, although that certainly doesn't help. Redford, who is calm, principled, and humble, found Woods's confrontational style exhausting. Woods takes pride in being the smartest person in the room, but Redford isn't interested in those intellectual competition games. Redford is reported to have said about their first meeting that he never wanted to understand the story. He wanted to dominate it. These two men exist at opposite ends of the creative spectrum. Redford thrives on calm, character nuance, and emotional interweaving. In contrast, Woods explodes into many rooms with dynamic force. Sharp, wired, often unpredictable. A casting director once said he could bring you excellence, but first, you had to survive the storm. Redford didn't want to take such risks. The clash became a tale shared among casting directors. A particularly tense encounter occurred in the late 80s during pre-production for a legal thriller that Redford was developing. Woods auditioned for a supporting role and appeared with sharp precision, only to derail the character's persona midway while debating the political implications of a line. Woods takes on a supporting role and appears with sharp precision, only to break character midway while debating the political implications of a line. What starts as an acting exercise quickly turns into a lecture on Cold War foreign policy. Redford listens for less than 2 minutes before he shuts the script and leaves the room. If I wanted to debate, he then says, I would go back to college. Many years later, Woods still continues to challenge Redford in interviews and industry panel discussions. Though he never directly named names, Woods occasionally referred to the hypocrites in Hollywood, those who preached peace but ran their studios like generals. Those in the know about history saw through the coded language. As for Redford, he refused to answer publicly, but being blacklisted meant silence and absolute quiet. His casting notes were said to include just one blunt phrase next to Woods' name. Never. Woods' undeniable talent made him the favorite for bold, unpredictable roles, but Redford didn't want to take them on. There's a difference between tension and toxicity. He once said he never understood that line. Opportunities had vanished. The phone never rang again. And even as Woods' career turned more controversial than craft, Redford remained quiet, except for sharp comments now and then in private. Redford later said he brought chaos to places that needed calm. I don't care about managing that energy. Who is Dustin Hoffman? All the men of the presidency might have elevated them to one of the most iconic pairs in cinema, but Redford was always quietly disappointed. Hoffman's approach. Hoffman often improvised, challenged the script, and had a habit of changing blocking mid-scene. Redford, a highly focused director-actor, hated the unpredictability. He felt Hoffman tried to dominate the camera without caring about collaboration. They never publicly showed hostility. But when asked why they never worked together again, Redford simply replied, "Once was enough." From the outside, it was magic. The two biggest stars of the 1970s played real-life journalists uncovering the biggest political scandal in U.S. history. But behind the scenes, it was the slow and fierce clash of two very different artistic philosophies. Redford was prepared, meticulous, and focused. Hoffman liked improvisation, sometimes instantly changing his presentation, breaking the rhythm and energy Redford had spent hours shaping. Crew members described the atmosphere at that time as quite tense, not explosive, not dramatic, just anxious. Hoffman would rehearse a scene one way and shoot it another. He would cleverly shift his position while filming to redirect the visual focus, often stepping into Redford's light. At first, Redford tried to see it as part of the creative process, but as production dragged on, the interruptions began to wear him down. There was a scene of a phone call in the newsroom that Hoffman was said to have filmed 7 times, each time with a different tone, pace, and unscripted dialogue. Redford, who had to react to those unpredictable changes, was reportedly very angry by the end of the shoot. Director Alan J. Pakula gently stayed on track, never letting the tension go too far, but everyone on set could feel it. A lighting technician recalls that you could see Bob biting his tongue. Every day behind closed doors, Redford voiced his concerns about losing the story's coherence. "We're trying to tell a story," he told Pakula during breaks, "not chase after thousands of little moments." However, the director kept both stars on course, unaware that the outcome would be unforgettable, even though the process was very fragile. Redford, who later directed critically acclaimed films, valued precision, efficiency, and discipline. For him, acting was a team sport, and Hoffman often felt like a player trying to win all by himself. Redford never publicly criticized Hoffman. But when reunions and retrospectives were held many years later, he always declined. No disagreements, no scandals, just an unspoken agreement between the two. Never again. Some people didn't like the movie, even if it was a masterpiece. They never openly showed hostility. But when asked why they never worked together again, Redford simply said once was enough. Tom Cruise, their only collaboration. Lions for Lambs was a disaster behind the scenes. Redford, who directed the film, struggled to get past Cruise's business mindset. Redford later mentioned that every note was about optics. Not about emotions, not about honesty, just branding. The crew was reportedly pushing for changes in scenes, angles, and even last-minute script rewrites. The film failed, and Redford walked away from that experience, calling it one of the most disappointing projects of his career. He never spoke to Cruise again. When the project was first introduced, it seemed like a dream combination. Redford, a seasoned statesman of American cinema, and Cruise, the giant of blockbuster films, were trying to pivot to serious filmmaking. But right from the start, the chemistry was off. Redford envisioned a stripped-down political play. Subtle, smart, and timely. The crews came to discuss lighting, angles, costumes, and the global message. It wasn't collaboration, it was a clash. Insiders reported that the tension arose immediately. Cruise, who is also the film's producer, wanted to have a say in just about everything, from the poster design to the editing pace. Sources say he attended production meetings alongside a group of public relations experts and image consultants, often using terms like market positioning and audience perception instead of the usual actor-director language. Redford, a man who once spent 3 days rehearsing a silent scene for everyday people, was utterly horrified. Even the rehearsal process revealed cracks in their collaboration. Cruise requested stylists to be on standby during styling sessions, reportedly because he wanted his image to convey discipline. Stunned, Redford later remarked, "I want that shot to show vulnerability." He wanted it to display symmetry. The two could not agree on the film's content. Redford viewed it as a cautionary tale about the failures of the establishment. Cruise saw it as a redemption story for a charismatic leader. On set, the energy grew increasingly tense. The film crew often paused mid-shoot to request lighting adjustments or suggest more engaging lines not in the script. Redford, who was very patient, initially tried to adapt, but by the third week, he clearly showed signs of frustration. An assistant on set described a moment during filming when Redford leaned forward and quietly asked, "Are we acting or selling campaign ads?" Even in post-production, Cruise's fingerprints were all over the place. Reports say he insisted on cutting several scenes from his film, arguing about the exact length of reaction shots. Redford handed him the rope until the studio intervened and sided with Cruise. That was the last straw. Redford handed over the film. He could wash his hands of it and ignore most of the articles. The film premiered to less than favorable reviews and unimpressive box office numbers. Cruise kept moving forward. Redford remained silent. This experience left a mark, not just as a creative failure, but also as a philosophical collapse. One person is trying to say something, while the other is trying to sell something. He never spoke to Cruise again. Mr. Dunaway. 3 Days of the Condor was a huge hit, but off-screen it was quite cold. It was said that Redford and Dunaway had no chemistry during filming, and insiders noted the tension was palpable between takes. Dunaway, known for her perfectionist and demanding nature, often clashed with the director, and Redford frequently found himself caught in the crossfire. "She isn't difficult because she cares," a crew member stated. "She's difficult because she doesn't trust anyone, not even him." Redford called her a storm in high heels. From the beginning, this pairing seemed very promising. Redford was at the peak of his power, successful at the box office, known for his calmness and professionalism. Dunaway had just left Chinatown and was considered one of the most attractive actresses of her generation, but their working styles couldn't be more different. Redford valued subtlety, economy, and restraint. Dunaway arrived on set each day as if she were preparing for war. She fiercely defended her working process and wasn't afraid to challenge anyone, including directors or co-stars. She often requested to review the script daily, asked for dialogue rewrites the night before filming, and was known for requesting changes to already approved lighting setups. She believed in trusting the team and maintaining motivation. She began to see the production process more as a daily negotiation than a creative space. According to a script supervisor, Redford once said during a break, "We're here to discover the truth, not to edit every syllable until they submit." Their shared scenes were tight, dark, and tense. But that tension wasn't acting. It was an uncontrollable frustration. Dunaway would often request multiple takes of a line, adjusting her tone to fit each syllable. Redford, who preferred to trust his instincts and move forward, increasingly found it difficult to cope. Some said he muttered, "We're not making a clock here," when she requested a reset for the 4th time on a relatively minor scene. One day, the tension exploded in a closed meeting with director Sidney Pollock. Dunaway questioned the emotional logic of her character in an important scene. At first, Redford sat silently but then became angry. "That's spy work, Faye, not Chekhov." The room fell silent. She stepped outside. The next day, she returned as if nothing had happened, but her mood never returned to normal. Although the script called for intimacy on screen, there was no warmth in their relationship. Sources say Redford requested a body double for the pickup shots after Dunaway finished filming. When asked about her in a press interview years later, he paused, smiled softly, and said, "She's unforgettable." No collaboration occurred afterward. No reunions, no nostalgic interviews about the making of the film. She wasn't difficult because she cared. A crew member noted she was quite demanding because she didn't trust anyone, not even him. Redford referred to her as a storm in high heels. Who is Robert Duvall? Though both starred in The Natural, Redford and Duvall were like oil and water. Duvall's instinctive improvisation clashed with Redford's structural precision from the very beginning. There are reports that Redford asked Duvall to stick to the script during an important scene, and Duvall outright refused. What followed was a loud argument that crew members still talk about. Duvall wanted to play jazz, Redford later said. "I want to play composed music. It's not music, it's noise." From the very first day on set, their differences were clear. Redford approached the film like a symphony. It was rehearsed, timed, and emotionally calibrated. He spent weeks preparing for the role of Roy Hobbs, fine-tuning every detail from body language to breath. Meanwhile, Duvall showed up without a script, no rehearsal plan, and a strong belief that acting truly comes from instinct, not from a page. At first, Redford really enjoyed that rawness. Duvall's role as the intriguing and unpredictable sports reporter Max Mercy was fascinating and lively. But as the filming progressed, that unpredictability became a weakness. Duvall would rewrite lines in the makeup chair, change the rhythm of a scene without warning, or convey a completely different emotional tone in each take. Redford, known for his patience, began to lose his patience. Their differences were not just about style. They were personal. Redford was calm, collected, and cautious. Duvall was hot-headed, erratic, and almost joyfully chaotic. On the set of The Natural, that contrast created an undercurrent of friction that never exploded but never cooled down either. "Both are excellent," a crew member noted, "but they weren't making the same film." The breakthrough occurred during a crucial confrontation scene. Redford wanted to reach a specific emotional rhythm, one that was directly tied to the larger story he and director Barry Levinson had carefully built. Duvall, uninterested in anything that wasn't his part, kept diffusing the tension with sarcastic remarks. Redford paused the scene, turned to Duvall, and said, "This isn't your movie." Duvall retorted, "It's nobody's until it becomes real." They debated for 15 minutes while the camera remained silent. Crew members stepped back. A sound technician later remarked that it felt like watching a campfire turn into a wildfire. Eventually, Levinson stepped in to mediate, and the scene was nearly complete. After filming, Redford was asked about working with Duvall. His answer was cut off. "He's very smart, but I don't need to go through that again." Duvall never publicly responded, but the two never shared a room again, even during press trips. There's a reason their second collaboration never came to be. It's not that there were no opportunities, but because both of them hadn't forgotten the flame that had gone out. Duvall wanted to play jazz music, Redford later said. "I want to play original compositions." "That's not music, that's noise." Paul Newman, that's a name no one expected. The man most closely associated with Redford, his partner in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting, the other half of the legend. But according to Redford, this relationship wasn't what it seemed. Redford said he was very charming, but he always kept his distance and sometimes acted foolishly to avoid unnecessary issues. There was no dramatic rivalry, just a slow erosion of trust. When Newman began to take more control in The Sting, Redford sensed the shift. "He was no longer my co-star, but he started to become my competitor," he once confided. Their friendship never completely fell apart, but it gradually became distant. From the outside, they looked like lightning in a bottle. A perfect contrast. Newman had a powerful charm and a natural charisma. Redford, the quiet storm, thoughtful and calm. Together, they changed the image of a movie star. Funny, self-aware, dangerously charming. But deep down, Redford always sensed something was guarded in Newman, a wall he could never cross. Their relationship on Butch Cassidy was warm, pleasant, built on laughter and long days in the desert. But by the time they reunited for The Sting, something had changed. Newman had more influence. He would attend meetings with studio executives, often bringing notes about the script, casting, even camera placements. Redford, still more interested in the art than politics, felt pushed to the sidelines. This was no longer just about two guys making a film together. A crew member later said it had turned into a chess game among the stars. Redford mostly kept his frustrations private. But those close to him witnessed the fallout. He admired Newman greatly, but he was also enraged by how the public treated Newman as the soul of their partnership. In interviews, reporters would ask Newman questions first. The headlines all focused on Newman's name. Redford once said, "Paul is the face, and I'm just the caption." The following years brought friendly interactions, mutual appreciation, occasional joint appearances, but they never made another film together. Many offers, many scripts were brought forward, but nothing came to fruition. When asked why, Redford always said the timing wasn't right. But those who knew the truth knew otherwise. "I understand. Time is not an issue. There has been trust, no cracks, no betrayal, just two symbols quietly drifting apart, mile by mile in silence." Redford says he's very charming, but he always keeps his distance and sometimes acts silly to escape unwanted situations. There's no dramatic struggle, just a slow erosion of trust. When Newman began taking more control in producing The Sting, Redford felt the change. "He was no longer just my co-star, he started to become my competitor," he once confided. The friendship never completely broke apart, but it gradually became distant. Some of these names will hurt, some will seem inevitable, but together, they paint a picture that few have seen before, of a man, with all his calmness and restraint, who also carries the scars of collaboration just like anyone else. Because alongside the bright sunshine on screen, Redford's Hollywood also has its shadows.